Listen carefully, because what I'm about to tell you might completely change the way you see the word unhappiness. You've heard it before. The sigh, the complaint, the subtle eye roll that says more than 1,000 words. You try to fix it. You work harder, talk softer, bring flowers, plan vacations, read relationship books. Yet somehow it's never enough. Every man who's been in a long-term relationship has felt that invisible weight, the feeling that no matter what he does, he's somehow the villain in a story he doesn't understand. But what if I told you that this pattern, this cycle of female dissatisfaction, isn't random? What if it's not even about you? There's something deeper happening, something ancient, psychological, even biological, that fuels chronic dissatisfaction in modern women. It's not evil. It's not malicious. It's programming. Centuries of conditioning layered over emotional inheritance, topped off by a digital world that thrives on comparison and envy. You're not fighting her moods. You're fighting a system that was installed before you ever met her. Think about it. How can one woman have a comfortable home, loyal partner, and stable life and still wake up angry, restless, and empty? It's not the car, the bills, or the relationship. It's the internal algorithm constantly scanning for what's missing instead of what's there. Society has built that algorithm. Fairy tales taught her that happily ever after is a right, not a pursuit. Social media taught her that love is a performance. Modern feminism taught her that needing anyone is weakness, yet she still craves connection. That's not empowerment, it's confusion wrapped in expectation. Meanwhile, men fall into the same trap, believing their love can repair someone else's emotional circuitry. They try to fix unhappiness like it's a leaking faucet, not realizing they're pouring energy into a bottomless drain. The harder they try, the more they reinforce her subconscious belief that she's the queen of a kingdom built on dissatisfaction. Every act of overcompensation becomes proof that she's right to feel unfulfilled. You see, the tragedy isn't that women are unhappy. The tragedy is that they don't understand why. They were programmed to chase an illusion of perfect happiness that doesn't exist in the real world. So when reality shows up with its flaws, routines, and imperfect partners, they interpret it as failure. But this isn't just about relationships. This is about a psychological loop that starts in childhood and ends in bitterness unless someone breaks the pattern. So before you blame yourself, before you contort your soul trying to make an unhappy woman smile, understand this: you're not the cause, you're the mirror. Her dissatisfaction existed long before you. You just happen to be the latest reflection. And until you understand the mechanism behind that unhappiness, you'll keep apologizing for storms you didn't create. Because sometimes it's not the man, not the marriage, not the life, it's the mind. And until the mind learns gratitude over grievance, no amount of love will ever be enough. It usually starts small, a sigh after dinner, a slight shift in tone when you talk about work, a comment that sounds harmless, you never listen, or you don't notice the little things anymore. You brush it off, thinking she's just having a bad day. But days turn into weeks, and soon every action you take is filtered through a lens of criticism. You're too quiet, too distracted, too serious, too relaxed. You start to realize that there's no just right version of you anymore. You're either too much or not enough, and the rules change by the hour. One man I knew, Daniel, learned this the hard way. He was a software engineer, calm, thoughtful, not the loud alpha type, but dependable. In the beginning, his girlfriend praised his stability. "You make me feel safe," she said. 6 months later, that same stability became the reason she was bored, so he tried to adapt. He became more spontaneous: surprise weekend trips, random gifts, spontaneous nights out. And guess what? Now she complained he was reckless with money and didn't think things through. It didn't matter which version he became, the dissatisfied narrative stayed the same. The target kept moving. That's the part most men miss. They think unhappiness can be solved with effort, like a math problem. But unhappiness in many women doesn't operate on logic. It's emotional gravity pulling her toward whatever she feels is missing, even if she can't name it. A man can do everything right, and she still find the one detail that feels wrong. Because the dissatisfaction isn't rooted in the situation, it's rooted in perception. When she looks at you, she doesn't always see the man in front of her. She sees the symbol of every unresolved emotion she's carried for years. The father who didn't show up, the boy who ghosted her, the boss who ignored her ideas. Every slight, every disappointment, every unhealed wound projects onto you. You become the canvas where her subconscious paints its frustrations. And no matter how much you scrub, The colors keep bleeding through. That's why men say things like, "I feel like I'm always walking on eggshells," or "I don't even know what she wants anymore." They're not crazy. They're responding to a moving target designed by a deeper system. It's not that she wants to be unhappy, it's that unhappiness feels like home. It's familiar. It's predictable. It gives her something to react to, something to control, something to fixate on. Another man I spoke to, Jason, told me something chilling. He said, "I realized she only felt alive when she was upset." He wasn't exaggerating. The calm moments made her restless. If things were peaceful for too long, she'd create conflict out of thin air, rereading old arguments, questioning his tone, accusing him of losing interest. Peace felt like emptiness to her, and drama felt like passion. For her, emotional turbulence equaled connection. You can see how dangerous that dynamic becomes. The man begins performing for approval that never comes. He works harder, gives more, apologizes faster. Every act of devotion makes her respect him less because deep down she equates peace with weakness. The more he bends, the less she values him. And slowly, without realizing it, he becomes invisible in his own relationship, present, but powerless. The cycle feeds itself. The more dissatisfied she becomes, the harder he tries. The harder he tries, the more she feels in control. Control replaces intimacy. Criticism replaces affection. And what started as small sighs and side-eyed comments turns into emotional corrosion that eats away at both of them. But here's the part no one says out loud. This constant discontent rarely starts with the relationship. It's already there waiting for a stage. The man just becomes the nearest actor in a play that's been running in her mind since childhood. And until you understand what wrote that script, you'll never stop playing a role in someone else's unresolved story. Because the truth is, you can't fix a problem that isn't really about you. And in the next layer, we'll see exactly where that problem begins, long before love, long before adulthood, long before you ever entered the picture. Long before love enters the picture, the blueprint for dissatisfaction is already being drawn. It doesn't begin in her 20s or after her first heartbreak. It begins in the quiet corners of childhood, when she's learning what love feels like, what attention costs, and whether her voice matters. Some people inherit blue eyes or curly hair. Others inherit emotional patterns, and some of those patterns are wired for disappointment. Psychologists have known for years that roughly half of our emotional disposition, our tendency toward optimism or pessimism, is genetic. It's not destiny, but it's a tilt. Some people are naturally tuned to notice beauty, others are tuned to notice danger. And when that negative bias meets emotional neglect or chaos in childhood, it can solidify into a lifelong pattern of scanning for what's missing instead of what's present. Take Emily, for instance. On the surface, she had a decent childhood. No major trauma, just the usual suburban chaos. But her father was emotionally distant, a workaholic who believed affection spoiled children. He provided everything materially, but warmth was rationed like oxygen. So Emily learned early, safety equals control and love equals anxiety. Fast forward 20 years, and that programming is still running. She meets men who adore her, yet she can't relax. If he texts too often, she's suffocated. If he doesn't, she panics. The relationship becomes a reflection of her nervous system, not his behavior. This is how deep the wiring goes. A woman's brain that grew up expecting disappointment will unconsciously recreate it. It's not a conscious decision, it's a pattern looped by familiarity. The same way your body craves sugar even when you're full, her mind craves emotional tension even when life is good. Because tension feels like home, then there's the modeling effect. A girl who grows up watching her mother complain about her father, seeing eye rolls instead of affection, arguments instead of laughter, she learns that dissatisfaction is normal. That's how women behave. That's what relationships look like. So when she becomes an adult, peace feels foreign. She doesn't know how to exist in harmony because her earliest blueprint of love was built on friction. One man I knew, Aaron, dated a woman named Chloe who seemed perfect at first, kind, funny, intelligent. But he noticed something strange. Anytime things went well between them, she'd find a reason to bring up something negative. If they had a beautiful weekend together, she'd pick a fight on Sunday night about something meaningless. When he finally asked her why she did that, she admitted, "When things are too calm, I start waiting for the other shoe to drop." That wasn't self-sabotage. That was conditioning. She'd grown up in a house where affection was always followed by anger. Her brain equated calm with danger because calmness was always the moment before the storm. This is why many relationships crumble under invisible pressure. One partner is chasing peace. The other is chasing what feels familiar. And if her baseline emotion is anxiety or resentment, then peace feels uncomfortable. She stirs things up, not because she wants to, but because her nervous system doesn't know how to exist in stillness. Even the so-called independent women aren't immune. Many grew up in environments where they had to self-soothe early, where trusting others felt unsafe. They learned that dependence equals weakness, so even when they find a loving partner, part of them resists vulnerability. They crave intimacy, but fear it at the same time. That push-pull dynamic come close, go away isn't drama, it's programming. But here's the kicker. Most people never realize this is what's happening. They think they're making choices in love, but they're following scripts written decades ago by parents who were just as lost. And the more she tries to control her environment to prevent pain, the more miserable she becomes because control and happiness can't coexist. One is rooted in fear, the other in trust. That's the tragic irony. The very defenses she built to protect herself from hurt are the same ones destroying her capacity for joy. She wants a loving man but can't let her guard down. She wants peace but keeps testing boundaries. She wants affection but mistrusts comfort. Every relationship becomes a battlefield between her past and her potential. So when you see that chronic dissatisfaction, when you feel her mood swinging from love to resentment overnight, understand it's rarely about you. You're just the latest player in a game that started before she could spell the word love. Her childhood didn't just shape her expectations, it programmed her definition of what feels normal. And until that definition changes, every good relationship will eventually feel wrong. But what happens when that programming meets modern expectations? When ancient emotional wiring collides with a culture that worships fantasy, that's where the real chaos begins. Because now, it's not just her past she's fighting, it's the impossible picture of perfection she's been told to chase. And that's exactly where we go next. Somewhere between Disney and Instagram, reality got lost. Modern women were sold a dream, a cinematic montage of endless romance, luxury, and emotional fireworks. From childhood, they were told that love would feel like destiny, that a man would appear to complete them, and that happiness was the natural reward for choosing correctly. No one mentioned that real love is maintenance, not magic, that it's built, not discovered. So when the fantasy collides with the ordinary, the disappointment feels like betrayal. Take Melissa. She grew up binging romantic comedies where the guy always knew exactly what to say, when to show up, and how to read her mind. By the time she reached her 30s, she'd internalized that script. Every relationship became a test of how well the man could predict her emotions. When he failed, and of course he did, because no one can read minds, she called him insensitive, emotionally unavailable, or not the one. She wasn't chasing love. She was chasing a movie scene that doesn't exist. This fantasy versus reality gap is brutal because it sets the emotional thermostat of the relationship at lukewarm disappointment. If a man works hard to provide stability, she misses excitement. If he brings excitement, she complains about instability. The problem isn't the man, it's the metric. She's measuring real life against a fiction designed to sell tickets and get clicks. And then came the era of social media, the new cathedral of comparison. It's not just about what she has, but how what she has looks. The relationship isn't private anymore. It's a performance. If her engagement photos don't get enough likes, she wonders if the relationship itself is worth less. If her friend's boyfriend plans a surprise trip to Italy, her partner's staycation feels like a failure. The metrics of happiness have been replaced by metrics of attention. I knew a woman named Jasmine who was engaged to a genuinely good man, a nurse. Kind-hearted, funny, emotionally grounded. But every time she opened her phone, she saw influencers flaunting diamond rings the size of her thumb and destination weddings in Bali. Within a few months, she was complaining to her fiancé that he didn't try hard enough. When I asked her what she meant, she said, "It's just not how I imagined it." That sentence carries centuries of conditioning. Not how I imagined it means not matching the fantasy I've been programmed to desire. This is the silent epidemic of modern relationships. People measuring reality against fantasy, then punishing reality for not keeping up. When a woman expects a relationship to heal her, excite her, and complete her all at once, she's building a psychological trap she can't escape. Because every time one expectation is met, another appears. It's emotional inflation. Happiness devalues the moment you have it, and it doesn't stop with romance. The same trap applies to lifestyle, career, and even self-image. The woman who gets promoted feels like she's failing as a mother. The mother who stays home feels like she's failing as an achiever. The woman who's single feels incomplete. The woman who's married fears she's settled. No matter what role she plays, the story in her head tells her she's missing something. This is how chronic dissatisfaction metastasizes. It feeds on contrast, the distance between what is and what should be. She scrolls through curated perfection daily, comparing her behind-the-scenes footage to everyone else's highlight reel. And when she looks at her partner, he becomes the most convenient symbol of that gap. The man she once saw as her dream becomes a reminder that the dream wasn't enough. But let's be clear, this isn't vanity. It's conditioning weaponized by modern culture. Companies sell products by convincing women they're one purchase away from perfection. Therapists sell empowerment programs by convincing them they're one mindset shift away from peace. Influencers sell lifestyles by convincing them everyone else already has it figured out. The result? A generation of women trained to chase an ever-moving horizon of fulfillment. And when the pursuit never ends, happiness never begins. The relationship that could have been nourishing becomes a scoreboard of unmet expectations. The man trying his best becomes a mirror for her dissatisfaction. And even when she has everything she once prayed for, she feels something's missing because the fantasy never included maintenance, boredom, or imperfection. So she keeps searching. New hobbies, new diets, new partners, new goals. But each new chase feels emptier than the last because the common denominator isn't what's missing, it's who's searching. Until she understands that happiness isn't found in perfection but peace, the pursuit itself becomes the prison. And that's when another, even more subtle force takes over, a mechanism that turns everything she gains into something she can no longer appreciate. A pattern so universal, it feels almost like gravity, the devaluation mechanism. And that's where the next truth begins. It's one of the strangest paradoxes in human behavior. The moment something becomes ours, we stop seeing its value. Psychologists call it hedonic adaptation, the brain's way of normalizing blessings until they feel ordinary. But in modern relationships, this adaptation has evolved into a full-blown virus of devaluation. It's not just about getting used to what you have, it's about subconsciously resenting it for not giving you the same thrill it once did. I once knew a man named Ryan who had been dating his girlfriend Tessa for 3 years. In the beginning, she adored him. She'd post photos of them constantly, brag about how supportive he was, tell friends he was everything she ever wanted. Fast forward to year 3, and she could barely stand him. Same man, same job, same affection. But suddenly, every little habit she once found charming became a source of irritation. The way he laughed too loud, the jokes she used to love, the meals he cooked, it all became invisible. She wasn't falling out of love, she was falling into familiarity. That's how the devaluation mechanism works. It's psychological erosion. When novelty fades, attention shifts from what's right to what's missing. And because the dopamine rush of the new wears off, many people interpret that normal drop in excitement as evidence of a problem. Instead of nurturing depth, they chase the high again. New man, new city, new job, same emptiness. Because what they're really addicted to is contrast, not connection. It's not just about relationships. You'll see the same pattern in every area of life. A woman works years to buy her dream car. The first week, she's euphoric. By month 6, it's just another vehicle that smells faintly of disappointment. She buys a new house, 3 bedrooms, a yard, a view, and within a year, she's browsing listings again. The problem isn't the car or the house or the man, it's the internal thermostat of appreciation that keeps resetting to 0. Sociologists have studied this for decades. When your mind normalizes good things quickly, gratitude becomes nearly impossible to sustain. That's why many people today can't hold joy for long. It's slippery. It slides out of the hands of anyone who confuses having with feeling. For women especially, this devaluation cycle often intertwines with identity. In the early phase of a relationship, she's adored, pursued, desired. She feels chosen, special. That rush of validation becomes the emotional drug she chases. But once she has him, the external validation disappears. There's no more pursuit, no more suspense, and she starts mistaking peace for boredom. Instead of leaning into comfort, she assumes something must be wrong. We've lost our spark, she say, not realizing that the spark didn't die, it matured. Let's take another example, Nadia, a 28-year-old marketing executive. She'd been dating a man named Marcus, who worshipped the ground she walked on. He planned dates, left notes, made her feel seen. Over time, she started feeling smothered. "He's too predictable," she said. "Too nice." Her friends told her she deserved more excitement, so she ended things. A year later, she was with someone new, spontaneous, mysterious, exciting. Within months, she was complaining again. "He's emotionally unavailable." What changed? Nothing but the setting. The novelty faded and her mind switched targets. The human brain isn't built to stay thrilled, it's built to survive. And survival means adaptation. The tragedy is that most people interpret adaptation as disappointment. Instead of learning to renew appreciation, they throw away what's stable in search of something that feels alive again. That's why, in this era of endless options, relationships are collapsing faster than ever. The moment imperfection appears, people assume it's a sign of failure rather than a test of maturity. They've forgotten that real connection deepens in the mundane, not the magical. When a woman hasn't trained her mind to appreciate consistency, she always equates excitement with value and comfort with decay. The man she begged the universe for becomes not enough. The job she prayed for becomes too stressful. The life she built becomes too normal. And because she doesn't recognize this as a psychological pattern, she believes her dissatisfaction is external. The devaluation mechanism is cruel because it tricks the brain into believing happiness lies in constant change. But what if happiness actually lives in stillness? What if fulfillment isn't found by upgrading partners or possessions, but by upgrading perception? The endless scrolling through someone else's highlight reel until her own life feels like a downgrade. And that's where we're heading next. Comparison is the thief of joy, but in the age of social media, it's also the architect of identity. Every scroll, every swipe, every filtered smile tells women one subtle message. You're behind. Behind in looks, behind in lifestyle. And the human brain, especially one already trained to chase perfection, interprets that message as failure. What used to be a quiet insecurity has turned into a full-blown epidemic of emotional exhaustion. Consider Leah, a 31-year-old graphic designer. Her mornings start not with gratitude but with her phone. Before she's even had coffee, she's already seen 3 engagement announcements, 2 friends posting soft life vacations, and 1 influencer unboxing a luxury bag worth her rent. By 8:30 a.m., her nervous system is flooded with envy disguised as motivation. She looks at her boyfriend across the breakfast table. He's kind, loyal, hardworking, and yet her heart whispers, "Why don't I feel like that?" This constant exposure creates a subconscious scoreboard. Every moment of someone else's joy becomes evidence of her own insufficiency. Even happy relationships start feeling inadequate because they don't photograph as well. That's the cruel irony. Her life may be good, but it's not performing well. The algorithm has replaced her intuition. The psychology behind it is brutal but simple. The brain can't tell the difference between observation and participation. When she sees endless images of other women living seemingly perfect lives, her body experiences that lack as real loss. It's not imagination, it's chemical. The same circuits that register hunger and deprivation light up when she feels she's missing out. So even when she has love, security, and stability, her nervous system insists something's missing. This comparison doesn't stop at possessions, it bleeds into self-worth. I met a woman named Brooke who admitted that she couldn't post a photo with her boyfriend unless it measured up to her friend's content. She'd spend hours editing pictures, comparing angles, rewriting captions to sound effortlessly in love. When I asked if she was happy, she said, "Honestly, I don't even know anymore. I just don't want people thinking I settled." That statement captures the sickness perfectly. She wasn't living her relationship, she was managing its image. And it's not only social media amplifying this crisis. Family, friends, and even therapy culture contribute to it. The constant push to live your best life has become another competition. The modern woman isn't just chasing happiness. She's performing it. Every milestone must be validated by others to feel real. But the more she seeks external validation, the further she drifts from genuine satisfaction. This identity crisis creates emotional whiplash. One day, she's empowered and independent. The next, she's lonely and questioning her femininity. She wants to be adored like the women she follows, but respected like the men she envies. The result is inner conflict, a tug-of-war between authenticity and performance. When this mindset invades relationships, the damage multiplies. The man beside her stops being a partner and becomes a benchmark. His love is weighed against other men's gestures, his income against strangers online, his affection against fictional ideals. And once that happens, no man stands a chance. Because he's not competing with another person, he's competing with an illusion. The most dangerous part? Many women don't even realize this is happening. They think they're simply not satisfied, unaware that their dissatisfaction is imported, downloaded from a digital world built to monetize envy. Platforms reward discontent because contentment doesn't sell. A happy woman doesn't need new clothes, a new trip, or a new partner. An insecure one keeps scrolling, spending, comparing. So when you see a woman spiraling into chronic unhappiness despite having everything she once wanted, remember she's not broken, she's hijacked. Her attention, her desires, her very sense of self have been outsourced to an algorithm that feeds on her longing. And when that hijacking goes unchecked, it leads to the next stage of the cycle, where masks replace authenticity and people forget who they were before they started performing. That's when unhappiness stops being a phase and becomes an identity. And that's exactly what we'll uncover next. Most people wear masks to survive socially, but many modern women have turned mask wearing into a full-time identity. From a young age, they learn that approval equals safety, so they become whatever earns them the most applause. Sweet daughter, perfect student, the cool girl, the woman who's always fine. And by the time she reaches adulthood, the performance is so deeply ingrained that she can't tell where the act ends and she begins. Take Mia, a 29-year-old paralegal. On social media, she looks effortlessly confident, daily affirmations, gym selfies, self-love quotes. In reality, she's terrified of being unliked. Every post, every outfit, every smile is calculated for perception. She's dating a man she doesn't even respect because breaking up would make her look unstable to her followers. When I asked what she actually wants, she paused and said, "I don't know, I only know what I should want." That pause is the sound of someone who's never met her authentic self. The pressure to perform femininity, ambition, and emotional strength simultaneously creates what psychologists call role collision. It's when multiple social expectations overlap until the person beneath them disappears. A woman is told she must be independent yet nurturing, career-driven yet domestically graceful, confident yet modest, sensual but never too much. It's an impossible balancing act, and most end up living exhausted, resentful lives behind curated smiles. Masks aren't just emotional armor, they become identity prisons. When a woman spends years pretending to be easygoing, agreeable, and endlessly understanding to attract or keep love, she starts resenting the very role she created. And when the resentment boils over, she doesn't confront the mask, she confronts the man. "You don't make me happy anymore," she says, unaware that what's suffocating her isn't him, it's the persona she built for him. I once met a couple, Vanessa and Liam. At first glance, they looked ideal. She was elegant, social, always smiling. But privately, she confessed that she hated the woman she'd become. "I act calm because I'm afraid if I show anger, he'll leave. I pretend I'm fine because that's what good women do." Her unhappiness wasn't born from mistreatment. It was the byproduct of suppression. Every fake smile cost her a piece of authenticity until she felt hollow. This self-betrayal manifests in subtle ways. Irritation at small things, chronic fatigue, loss of attraction, even anxiety without clear cause. Because living as someone you're not requires constant self-monitoring. It's emotional labor that never ends. The more she performs, the more disconnected she feels, and that disconnection morphs into chronic unhappiness. Ironically, society rewards the mask. The woman who smiles through burnout gets praised for having it all. The one who posts her struggles online gets called dramatic. The result? A generation that confuses composure with happiness and validation with peace. Another example, Rachel, a teacher in her mid-30s, had built her identity around being the strong one. She never asked for help, never admitted when she was lonely. Her friends admired her independence, but at night she cried quietly, wondering why relationships always felt distant. The answer was simple but painful. You can't receive love through a mask. You can only receive admiration. And admiration never fills the same void. Men often misinterpret this unhappiness as ungratefulness or manipulation, but it's deeper than that. It's the slow suffocation of authenticity. Many women believe their true self isn't lovable. So they craft personas to earn affection and then despise the affection because it's given to the mask, not them. That disconnect breeds resentment, which eventually gets projected onto their partners. This is the hidden cost of modern validation culture. The more curated your identity becomes, the lonelier you feel inside it. Because every compliment, every "you're so lucky" reinforces the illusion that you're living your dream life, while the real you silently starves underneath. And when that starvation becomes unbearable, something darker begins to surface. The mask starts cracking, the resentment spills over, and the person who's been performing for years suddenly sabotages everything she built just to feel something real again. That's the breaking point. And that's where the story heads next, when the unhappiness becomes not just a feeling, but a full-blown identity she can't escape. There comes a point where unhappiness stops being a temporary emotion and becomes a personality trait. It's no longer something she feels, it's who she is. You can recognize it by the tone, the posture, the conversations that always circle back to what's wrong. These women no longer seek happiness because happiness would threaten their identity. Misery gives them purpose. Complaining gives them community. Victimhood gives them control. Take Sabrina, a 36-year-old project manager who could recite every injustice in her life like a rehearsed speech. Her boss was sexist, her friends were flaky, her exes were narcissists, her parents never supported her dreams. To hear her tell it, she'd been uniquely cursed. But when you looked closer, you noticed the pattern. Every story had the same hero and the same villain. She was always the wronged one, and everyone else was always to blame. She wasn't trying to fix her life. She was trying to win the narrative of suffering. Because for her, being unhappy wasn't the problem, it was the brand. This identity addiction is reinforced by social structures. Online, unhappiness sells. The relatable rant gets more engagement than calm reflection. The tearful confessional gets more sympathy than accountability. Entire subcultures have emerged where misery is currency, women bonding over shared complaints, competing over who's more burnt out, more done with men, more traumatized. It's emotional one-upmanship disguised as empowerment. The tragedy is that the brain adapts to this identity just like it adapts to anything else. The more she repeats the narrative of pain, the more real it becomes. Neural pathways strengthen around those complaints until she literally sees the world through the lens of grievance. Even neutral events, her partner forgetting to text, a friend rescheduling plans, become proof of betrayal. It's confirmation bias fueled by emotional addiction. I once met Alina, a successful architect who'd been in therapy for years. She could quote every psychological term: attachment style, gaslighting, emotional labor, but none of it made her happier. In fact, it made her worse. Every conversation with her partner turned into a diagnostic session. "You're dismissive avoidant," she'd say. "You're invalidating my emotional truth." The language of healing had become the language of warfare. Therapy hadn't cured her unhappiness, it had intellectualized it. Now, she could justify her misery with professional vocabulary. This is what happens when self-help becomes self-worship, when healing turns into identity instead of growth. True healing requires surrender, letting go of pain, forgiving, accepting imperfection, but that means losing the drama, losing the moral superiority, losing the victim crown. And for some, that's terrifying, because without unhappiness, who are they? In relationships, this dynamic is devastating. The man finds himself constantly on trial, accused of crimes he never committed. No apology satisfies because the issue isn't external, it's existential. He's trying to love someone whose entire sense of self depends on being wronged. And no matter how much he gives, she interprets his effort as proof that she's broken and he's guilty. Meanwhile, her inner world becomes a self-sustaining storm. Misery fuels attention. Attention fuels validation. Validation fuels more misery. It's an emotional economy that rewards negativity and bankrupts gratitude. She doesn't realize that by clinging to her pain, she's protecting herself from change, because change would dismantle the identity she's built. A friend once told me about his ex-wife Clara. After their divorce, she joined multiple online support groups. At first, it helped her vent. But months later, she was posting daily essays about how all men were toxic and marriage was a scam. When he tried to reach out and make peace, she ignored him because forgiveness would have cost her audience. The outrage had become her stage. And that's the core of this modern tragedy. Some people would rather stay unhappy than risk becoming irrelevant. In a world where pain performs better than peace, misery feels like meaning. But here's the truth: most never accept unhappiness only becomes identity when you stop taking responsibility. When you start mistaking emotion for evidence. When you trade growth for grievance. And while men can't fix that, they can choose not to be consumed by it. Because once you understand that chronic unhappiness isn't a reflection of you but a mirror of her unhealed self, you stop apologizing for storms you didn't create. You stop trying to save someone who's in love with their suffering. And maybe that's the real freedom, realizing that peace isn't found in fixing the unhappy, but in refusing to join them. Because at the end of the day, the saddest prison is the one built from your own pain, and the happiest escape is walking away from someone who's determined to stay inside it.